Last time we made a candy cauldron and an ice cream cone. In this part 2 of Halloweenish, we make a simple candy cookie and a recognizable bunny covered in sanding sugar. You would think that this cookie would have been the easiest of all cookies to come up with a design for. But for some strange reason, I couldn't think of anything. If you look at the design I did for this cookie, you can see there's only an outline. I didn't even come up with a real name for it. Candy cookie seems more like a description than a name. So even as I flood, I don't have a clue what it is I'm going to do with this guy. All I know is that I need to use my 3 candy corn colors to keep up with the candy corn theme. The cutter I used came from a forum where people post their free stereolithography files used to 3D print. It was cute. It was free. We printed it. I suppose I could have made a spider to go on top. I've seen people do that before with cutters this shape, but that did not appeal to me. It is really interesting to me how my style is developing. So far, it's more of what isn't my style than what is. But I've pretty much figured out already that super cutesy doesn't really interest me. Which really shouldn't be a surprise because I don't really gravitate to super cutesy things anywhere. What do I mean by super cutesy? Well, for one, I really don't like to put faces on things that don't normally have faces. Like when I decorated the pineapples and watermelons for Sweet Summer. I just couldn't put a face on them, even though the original designs had faces. As usual, I'm using a 1 consistency outline and flood. I use the same consistency method as the Graceful Baker. I always refer you to her because I cannot yet be trusted to help anyone understand icing consistencies. I barely understand them. She has a long version and a short version of her explanation. If you're like me and still in the dark, or just starting to see a little bit of illumination on this elusive subject, I highly recommend checking out one of her videos. I've linked the shorter version for you below. So I ended up doing the only thing I could really think of to do. Make this a normal looking candy. I think I just got caught up in the excitement of my newly awakened creativity, and I thought I need to come up with something special for each and every cookie. Not true. I probably should reserve a few cookies of each set to be a bit less intense to design and decorate. Why? Well, 1, so that I don't burn myself out. I'm not a naturally creative person. I don't see ways to be creative in everything I do. And if I keep pushing really hard, instead of strengthening my creativity muscle, I'm more likely to poop out. This is fun. I want it to stay fun. After allowing the icing to crust over for about 15 minutes in my dehydrator set at 95 degrees, I use my soft peak piping consistency to lay down details on the top here. I couldn't decide on how to do the swirl in the middle, so on one cookie I started from the inside out and on this one from the outside in. It didn't make much of a difference, so feel free to do whichever way feels most comfortable for you. Good thing the wrappings on these kinds of candies are usually all wonky, because my execution here is definitely a bit wonky. However simple it is, I do think it's cute. I think what I like best is the contrast between the white and the yellow. If you didn't see part 1, you might be a little confused by the bunny shape. How does a bunny end up in a Halloween-themed set? That is where the ish comes in. I designed 14 cookies for this series. 7 traditionally recognizable Halloween cutter shapes, and 7 from other holidays or times of the year. You don't have to use the bunny cutter, only at Easter. Interestingly, when I did a search for candy corn Peeps, I was surprised to find that I didn't see a single Peeps product in the traditional candy corn styling. Okay, full confession. I just looked that up right now as I write this commentary. But I am still surprised. In fact, if I were Peeps, I would make this exact color and shape for Halloween. I think it would have no problem selling. It's a bunny dressed as candy corn. While I struggle with the wet on wet technique, I am quite fond of wet next to wet. I'll go into detail about my wet on wet struggles when we get to part 7. I am a fan of how the icing melts together, creating a nice little line without an indent. This is achieved by flooding the next section immediately instead of waiting for it to dry a bit. I usually rely heavily on flooding in sections in my designs. I just checked. I didn't do a single cookie where I flooded in sections in this series. That's probably a good thing. I know it saved me a ton of time. This 5-minute cookie would have taken me 20 minutes to flood in sections, and that is with just one stop in the dehydrator. On a previous design, I had so many sections it took me 61 minutes start to finish. I made 2 versions of each cookie. I usually try to show you the first cookie I decorate. Mostly because part of what I'm trying to achieve with these videos is to show you what it's really like for the person just starting out and improving through practice. I find that most of the larger channels, while they do an excellent job of teaching the ins and outs of how to decorate, because they have long since become experts, the relatability to the newbie is kind of missing. Though we need them. I need them. Without the likes of The Graceful Baker, Little Cookie Co., Lolly's Home Kitchen, and Rock City Cookies, I would not be here. So all that being said, I am showing you the second cookie I decorated, because on the first one, I completely forgot I intended to put a bunch of sanding sugar on top, and I flooded all the way to the edge. The reason I don't flood to the edge is so that when I place my thick coat of sanding sugar on top, the wet icing has space to flatten out a bit without falling over the edge of my cookie. I probably could have gotten a little closer to the edge here, but I guess I overcorrected just a bit. This is a coarse sanding sugar. I got this one at Target. It seems this stuff comes in 2 sizes, large and small, or coarse and fine. They don't state on the label what you're getting, but there is a clear difference when you look at them side by side. Best practice? Do this over a bowl. 2 good reasons to do it this way. A, it's less of a mess, and 2, you can dump the extra right back into the jar. I know they sell fancy sprinkle, capture, dumper, backer inner deals, but funds are limited and it's not in the budget right now. So my grandmother's pretty glass bowl will have to do.
15 minutes later.
You can see here how careful I'm being with this cookie. The reason is that the icing on the top has slightly crusted, but the icing underneath has not, which lends to cracking if jostled around too much. Now here it probably isn't as much of a concern since I covered it with sanding sugar, but that cookie is warm and so very soft. You can still break the cookie. No Peeps Bunny would be complete without the signature 3-dot face. This is my soft peak black. Some people prefer to use black sugar pearls. I prefer to always have a bit of black on hand just for occasions like this. See you next time for part 3, where I try a new technique on my cat.
Next time on Kuny's Cookie Chronicles.
So far in this series, we've made a cute Peeps-inspired bunny and used a brush to create slub-textured ice cream. In this part 3 of Halloweenish, we will put some fur on my cat, stack some cookies, and I'll show you how I made the candy corn colors.